All right. Well, I got a story, or we can get to Kendall's email. Which one would you like to do? I'll give you the choice.
Let's knock down Kendall's email.
All right. Kendall, of course, she's a fledgling radio star in her own right. She's got her own podcast on Uncontrolled Noise, which is Metal and Kendall on Sunday nights. And she does her metal show on Wilkes Radio at Wilkes College on Monday afternoon. Mm-hmm. She's obviously a fan of the CMS, right. And she counts you and I as a influence.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that?
The world has gone crazy.
Gone to shit.
Yeah. Anyway, Kendall writes in. She says, Neeley, a topic for you guys, maybe more of a question.
Okay.
Name your top 3 influences, be it a writer, an artist, a role model, etc., and why. I'm writing a paper for class, and I'm including you, myself, and Shifty C, that being you, Chris,
me,
as my influences.
Cool.
Overall, I'm constructing a tree of influential people.
Okay.
Of course, I already have some ideas of your influences from being a fan, but hey, why not get a direct answer if I can?
All right.
If this seems gay, is that a homophobic slur?
Hey, easy.
Then I'll just request Exodus Body Harvest.
Okay.
Hail and kill Kendall.
All right. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I don't think this is going to be any kind of big surprise. There's all kinds of people who have influenced me through my life.
Yeah.
From childhood on to adult years.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, very early on, I'm talking by the ages of probably like 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there.
Right.
Musical influences. I've covered this on the show many times. My very, very, very earliest musical influence was the band Chicago.
Okay.
And I'll tell you how I discovered them. When I have a brother who's exactly 10 years to the day older than me.
Wow, another guy that never got presents on Christmas.
More or less, yes.
Wow.
Which is very strange. He and I are 10 years apart to the day.
That is crazy.
That is crazy. Well, when we lived in Pittsburgh, I was, 6 years old, so he was like 16.
Okay.
So he listened to the local rock radio station, which at the time was WIXY or something like that. It was called Wixie.
Okay.
And they played the most popular rock songs at the time.
Sure.
And one of the most prevalent music artists that I heard on the radio from the radio station that he listened to was Chicago. That was the first band that caught my ear.
Okay.
So from a very early age of, like I said, about 6, 7 years old, I was drawn to their music immediately.
Okay.
Another, so even to this day, 40 some years later, I've seen them over 50 times.
Right.
Met them on couple of occasions.
Broke them up.
He broke them up. I've interviewed a couple of the members.
Right.
You and I interviewed Robert Lamb.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was very cool. You set that up. That was a surprise to me. That was one of my favorite times. I've met them on a couple of occasions. I interviewed Bill Champlin the day before he got booted from the band.
Right.
And so they've been very influential for me because they've been, as the old cliche goes, they've been the song track to my life, from a very early age.
Right.
As solo artists go, if we're going to stick with music here,
okay.
As solo artists go, probably my biggest influence as solo artist was probably John Mellencamp.
Okay.
Big John Mellencamp fan. And sort of in the same vein, a little more folksy, though, is Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah.
I listened to a lot of Gordon Lightfoot, listened to a lot of John Mellencamp. Met both of them.
Sure.
On a couple of different occasions, I've had the opportunity to meet both of those guys and speak to them. So as solo artists go, probably those two are my most influential because I like their songs of life more or less.
Sure.
As far as heroes go, as far as personal heroes, obviously I've covered this on the show, Evel Knievel. Big influence on me. I had the unique opportunity to meet Evel Knievel, and I was at the after party when Robbie Knievel jumped the fountains at Caesar's Palace back in 1989.
Right.
It was a fluke that I got in. There's a whole story, which I told you before, about how I got into that party. Got to meet and sit and talk with Evel Knievel, which was a huge deal for me.
Sure.
If you ever have an opportunity, probably one of the things that influenced me the most, of course, Evel Knievel was at his pinnacle of success and popularity in the 70s, which, I was in preteen in my 70s.
Right.
In the 70s, and as a lot of guys did, and I'm sure you did the same thing, we used to jump our bikes over ramps and all kinds of stuff and pretend to be Evel Knievel and all that. And of course we saw him on Wide World of Sports jumping buses and cars, and of course the Snake River Canyon, which of course that stuntman a couple of weeks ago paid tribute to Evel Knievel by jumping the Snake River Canyon successfully.
Sure.
So as a child or as a kid, growing up in the 70s and seeing a superhero or a real superhero, not Spider-Man or Superman or Batman or anything.
Right,
this is a real life flesh and blood guy doing the stunts that he did. Of course, that leaves an impact on you.
Sure.
But it wasn't until later in life, in my 20s, that a documentary was released in 1986 called Last of the Gladiators.
Okay.
It's a Evel Knievel documentary that he narrates, and he basically talks about his life as a stuntman, a national figure and whatnot. And some of the words that he said in that documentary stick with me today.
Okay.
And he just had a lot of good values. Evel Knievel, if you know anything about the guy, like everybody, be it Donald Trump or anyone, he's had his dark side.
Sure.
There was women, there was booze, there was infidelities, there were this and that, but it didn't take away from the fact that this guy achieved due to his perseverance.
Right.
And that's what I take away from Evel Knievel. The guy never gave up.
Right.
He never stayed down. The guy got in accidents and motorcycle wrecks and stuff, and the guy always got back up. And that's one of the things that has stuck with me, and this is how he's influenced me, is you can fall many times in life, but you're never a failure until you refuse to get up.
Sure.
And I think you, as someone who suffered a horrific accident, can identify with.
Oh yeah, I look at Evel as a pussy. Nothing to me. I went through more than that guy. Sure. And then probably one of my biggest influences and one of the most positive influences in my life has been my own father. Sure.
My dad was a very good dad. I never heard this guy curse once in his life.
Wow.
Never saw him take a drink in his life. Never was abusive, never used harsh language, but he was very firm. Mm-hmm. And he led with a very strong guiding hand. And I look at my father as a role model. I did not follow in his footsteps. He raised 7 children, all from the same woman.
Nice.
And somehow he was the sole breadwinner in our family, and we were never rich.
Right.
But the guy went to work every day. He paid the bills. He made sure we had a roof over our head. He sent me to college. He sent my brothers and sisters to school. And somehow the guy at 80, I think he's 86 now, he's a multimillionaire.
Look at that.
So I don't know anyone better to look up to than a guy who went through the trials and tribulations of raising 7 children, losing 2 wives. My mother was killed in a car wreck in 1985.
Right.
He remarried in 1987. His wife passed away about 5 years ago from a brain tumor after 25 years of marriage.
Ouch.
And the guy is still healthy as a horse, has his hobbies, lives his life the way that he chooses on his own, on his own, what's the word I'm looking for, Chris? On his own.
His own time or his own the way he wants to.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a word I was looking for in his, the way he wants to do it.
Right.
He's not a slave to the system per se.
Right.
So, biggest influence, my own father. So, I said this on the show a couple of weeks ago. What I do here on the show, this is not something I'm sure he would be proud of if he listened to me. But the thing is I do this on my own terms. That's the word I'm looking for. I do this show on my own terms, and I don't feel guilty about it. But it's not something I would go, hey, Dad, check out what me and Chris did.
Yeah.
But I do know that he's proud of me. And I've told this story on the show a while back, about 3 years ago. I think it was about 3 years ago. He came to Thanksgiving at my oldest sister's house, which she lives only about an hour east of me here.
Okay.
And I hadn't seen him in a couple of months, and
right.
He greeted me when I came in the house for Thanksgiving, and he said, I was looking your name up on the internet the other day. He says, do you know how famous you are? I was just like, what? He says, my gosh, I never realized how much you've been involved with. So that's it for me. Music-wise, personal hero-wise, and influence-wise, that pretty much sums it up for me.
Okay. Mine's a lot shorter than that. Music-wise, certainly Metallica. Certainly, James Hetfield, and certainly the Pantera guys, but more of the Pantera guys because I got to know them. Lemmy, just because it had nothing to do with the music. I mean, I'm touch go with the music. I mean, I love Motorhead, don't get me wrong, but I don't even really love all the albums necessarily. They're okay. But Lemmy's attitude is who I try to be. I try to live exactly that same way. Don't give a fuck. Do what I'm going to do. And people don't like it, tough shit. And so far that's worked. So I would say Lemmy, as far as kind of is like a music crossover into real world. Probably my doctor, Dr. Fratty Ann, that put me back to life. Because Lord knows I wasn't supposed to be back to life. And this fucking guy, he really didn't have to do all the shit that he did with me, and he took the time to make sure that I got through it. And Lord knows that was a chore, and I didn't make, as anybody that's read the book knows, I certainly didn't make it easy. So he would definitely be one. And I don't know, probably my mom. I mean, my dad too, but definitely my mom, just because of my mom kind of molded a lot of the shit that is me, as far as, like, I don't know how to put this. My dad would be the one. I'll tell this story real quick. There was a time I was about 9 years old or something. I was riding around the neighborhood on my bike, and I just decided that was the day I could start swearing. So I'm riding around the neighborhood and I'm saying, damn, that was my big swear word, was damn.
Sure.
And I'm riding around the neighborhood and I'm like, I don't give a damn, and damn this and damn, that was my big word. And sure as shit, one of the neighbor moms heard me and called my house.
Sure.
And, I immediately got you remember the old yell out the door?
Yeah.
Get your butt in here.
Right.
So I got that. I got sat down at the table, and my dad just lost his fucking mind. He was like, "You don't ever use that language," and blah, 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 blah. And I got grounded or whatever. But then my mom came in a little later, and she was like, "You're going to be who you're going to be. And people are going to always tell you that it's bad or whatever, but you need to be comfortable with who you are." And she told me, she said, "I don't approve of that, but if that's what you're going to do, that's what you're going to do."
Right.
And she sort of taught me that lesson. I mean, real young. And I always did that. And you know me, even off, people hear the radio thing, but you know me off the air. It's not real different. Not really. I say what I want to say, no matter who the audience is. And I live that way. And that's definitely because I was taught early on to just do. I was taught by my dad to work fucking hard. I mean, my dad worked hard as a motherfucker as a truck driver.
As did my dad.
Yeah. So, and you too, as a truck driver, you know how hard that work is.
Absolutely.
And he did that for his whole life. And I used to ride with him in the summers. He would take me out for 2 weeks to go do work, and not just to sit around and say, "Dad, now I'm 12, let's talk about girls." It wasn't nothing like that. It was like, "All right, kid, let's get in the back here and load these fucking trucks."
Right.
He taught me to work fucking hard, and I worked hard. When I was a kid. When I was a kid, I used to work he was the traffic manager at Brown Derby Restaurants. And I used to go into the Brown Derby at 4:00 in the morning. When I was 15, I had a special work permit when I was 15 years old to drive. And I would drive to Northfield from Streetsboro. What's that, 20 miles, 15 miles?
Yeah, give or take.
15 miles or so. I would drive in, a 15-year-old kid at 4 in the morning. I would load trucks. Then I would drive back and go to school. Because my dad wanted me to work. He wanted me to understand that if you don't fucking bust your balls, you're not going to get anywhere. And I did, and that's, it's no secret how hard I go now.
Sure.
And I honestly attribute that to my mom and my dad, especially my dad, as far as being like, "Dude, the only time, the minute you stop, that next guy," I remember him saying that. I wrote this in his eulogy, actually. He told me one time, "The minute you stop working, that guy right behind you is going to steal your fucking shit."
Absolutely.
So don't fucking stop.
Right.
And I live that way. And, it's weird that my musical hero was the same way. Lemmy. Lemmy worked until he dropped dead.
He did.
Literally.
Absolutely.
And, you can look at Motorhead and you can like Motorhead or you can hate Motorhead, but you can't argue that Motorhead was one of the most busiest bands ever. They were always on tour. The only time they came off tour was to record the next record and then go back out.
Right.
For 50 fucking years. They did it for their whole existence, and that's how I roll, So... I guess those are my hero types. I mean, if we're going to go into movies and all that stuff, I could probably go into that too. I would definitely say like Francis Ford Coppola as far as writing. Anybody that writes dialogue based shit, I'm into.
Sure.
As far as, it's weird because people, when I do a lot of interviews for the books, I get asked all the time about books that I've read, and I haven't read any. I don't read. I would bet anything you've read 10 times as many books as me.
Yeah, I read a lot.
Well, then you've read 100 times more, because I literally have read, I would say, under 20 books in my life, other than school shit. Just to sit down and read something. There's so few I can name them off the top of my head. There's Howard Stern's books. I read the Sammy Hagar book. Does Book on Tape count?
I guess that would be like listening to a movie or something.
Yeah. If Book on Tape counts, I did the Sammy Hagar book. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't read much. So, it's weird that I would be a 3-time working on a 4th book and I don't read books.
Sure.
But it is what it is,
right.
know. But I don't know, man. To me, I'm not a hero guy. Like you take inspiration from Evel Knievel.
I do.
I know that.
Yep.
And I mean, I can, me and you can talk off the air, and you'll bring up an Evel story, and it's clear that that's important to you.
Right.
I don't know that I have that same connection to other people other than myself. You know, because I'm a straight maniac, egomaniac.
Sure.
And, you know, I take a lot of inspiration from myself. If you want the real truth of it, is I look at myself when I decide I don't want to fucking work. You know, when I'm in the chair and I'm 12 hours in or whatever, and I'm like, dude, you fucking did it yesterday. Stop being a pussy and fucking do the job.
Yeah. I think like a guy like an Evel Knievel is that, you know, one of the things that made him great in my eyes was that what he did was out of step with society.
Right.
And I always, you know, I took that as a cue that you don't always have to follow the hard and fast rules.
Right.
Sometimes you have to make your own path. Mm-hmm. And when you stand up and are very strong, people admire you and they follow you. Not that I personally have had any desire that, I want to be the leader. Right. I think that just naturally comes to you. Right. And, you know, and this is certainly not blowing my own horn in any way, but people have a tendency to gravitate toward me. Sure. And take a cue from me, much like they do with you. Right. I mean, I read some of the posts on your Facebook page that say, you know, I read your book and, you know, I wish I had this and that about me the same way that you do and all this and that, you know. And the same way with me. It's just like people gravitate toward you and go, man, I wish I could be more like that. I wish I could do that more, you know.
Yeah, well, you know what? You can. See, that's where I always get lost, though, is I don't and maybe you can explain it, maybe you can't. I don't understand when people say, I wish I could be like whatever.
Well, because it's the fear, I don't know if it's fear or concern that somebody might criticize them.
Yeah, I guess.
I think that's what it is. It's mostly like I'm afraid of the backlash or criticism I might take if I were to make a strong statement or make a stand. And I think you and I both agree that neither one of us care.
Yeah, I could give a shit.
Well, that's the whole thing. I don't care.
I don't care.
Say what are you going to do to me? You know, what are you going to do? You're going to look at me funny, or you're going to give me a hard look, or you're going to criticize me verbally? I'm going to just melt because you just said something mean to me.
Well, dude, you just have to look past it. I mean, when I was going through the divorce, you know, and I started writing the book, when I started writing Victories, my ex was the first one to fucking shit on it. She was like, this will just be something else that you don't finish. And I was like, okay, challenge accepted. You know, and I knew that it was going to make my life a little bit harder. And as you're well aware with some stuff we won't talk about on the show, it has made my life a little bit harder.
Sure.
But I didn't care. You know, I just, fuck it. That's what I'm going to do. And now I'm a hero to the divorcees because I wrote a dumb book about being divorced.
But there you go. You took the attitude like, I don't care. I'm not looking to please you.
Right. Well, and that's the same that I did with Victories. You know, Victories is a tough read. I'm the first one to admit Victories is a very tough book to read. You know, now for me, obviously it's tough because I can fucking remember every last fucking pain of it. But, you know, the response that I've gotten from everybody else, and you've read it, it's not a fun read. It's not a, hey, this was great. I wish I could be that guy.
But the difference between me reading that book and others is that I lived it with you. Yeah, true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is true. But I mean, my point is that there's so many people out there that fear, you know, and I know this from the burn community. Not that I'm a very active member because I find most of them to be pussies, but, you know, most people that have been burned can't find a way to express
what they want to say. They all seem to have something they want to say, and none of them can do it. And to be fair, it took me an awful long time to do it too. But you can't live your life in fear.
Right.
Fear of rejection, fear of
criticism.
Somebody going to call you a name? Somebody going to say you're stupid? Okay. Maybe I'm stupid. Fair enough. It still isn't stopping me from owning businesses and writing books and doing radio and doing all these magic things that people think are so hard.
Mm-hmm.
None of it's hard. You just have to do it.
Yep.
You just have to commit.
Right.
That's all.
Yep.
And you can still have fun doing it. Lord knows. You know me. There ain't many people that run as fucking crazy as I do when it's time to be partying, right?
Absolutely.
So I clearly have that side of me too. I mean, when I work, and I work pretty regularly 100 hours a week. But then when it's time to have fun, all bets are off. I'm going to go at that with the same energy as well.
Yeah.
And I think I learned all that from, examples of work hard, play hard.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the one last most prevalent influence here, as far as this show goes, is my good friend Don Dokken.
Okay.
I mean, he was one of the biggest inspirations for me even starting this show.
Sure.
I met Don about a month before I went to broadcasting school back in 1995.
Right.
And because that style of music was not being represented on any kind of commercial outlet,
mm-hmm.
that was one of the biggest drivers to start the show.
Right.
And I had the opportunity. I drove to Toledo to do it, and I met with Don personally, face to face, and I told him what my plan was. And the guy embraced me from the very beginning and basically told me, let me know how that goes.
Right.
And 20 years later, we're, the best of buds.
Yeah, which is great.
So this show was one of the biggest influence where the classic metal show is concerned is the music of Dokken or, Don Dokken himself. Regardless of you like him or hate him or think he's a dick or you're a George fan or whatever it is, or maybe we talk too much about it. Regardless of it, that's just the fact.
Yeah. That's why Lord knows and I've said this on the show as recently as last week. I think we talk about it sometimes.
Sure, we do. Sure, we do.
But whatever. That's the nature of where the show came from. Be happy we do, because if we didn't, there probably wouldn't be a show.
You're right.
I mean, honestly, if you started it because you liked Dokken's music and no other reason and had no connection, there would not be a show right now. No way.
You're right.
Because you wouldn't have the drive to do it. As far as radio influences, I have two. One, of course, is Howard Stern. No shock there.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. I got to meet Howard, prior to going to radio school.
Sure. I never met him.
I did. I met him once.
I've met Stuttering John, and I've met Jackie, and I met Gary, but I've never met Howard. Probably never will, because he stinks now, and I wouldn't even want to meet him now. But, I certainly, and not the money thing with that guy, but just more the I don't give a fuck. I loved that. That was so what I wanted to do. But even before that, and you'll remember this name, and a lot of people will not know who the fuck this is. But there was a sports show on at the time it was 3WE 1100.
Right.
And it came on after the Indians games. And the guy's name that did the show was Pete Franklin.
Okay.
Remember Pete Franklin?
I do.
And what I loved about Pete Franklin was that he would trash the callers. If you called in to Pete Franklin's show and you asked a dumb question, he would fucking kill you. and I was young, man. I mean, I think I've told this story on the air, but if I haven't, I'll tell it real quick. I used to sit, we had a big front room in our house, and there was a pool table in the front room. And when I was 7, 8 years old, whatever it was, my mom had a stereo in the corner, remember the old box stereo?
Yeah, absolutely.
Played albums and had a radio in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I used to sit in the living room every single night. I was a baseball junkie. And every night I would sit there and I would listen to the baseball games, to the Indians games. And at some point I ended up with a tape recorder with one of the little tiny microphones with the on-off switch on it. And I would sit under the pool table and I would pretend to do the broadcasts. I would hear them talking about the broadcast and I would do it. I would record it. And then after then I would do my Pete Franklin imitations. Like during the commercials of Pete Franklin, my mom says she has these tapes, and if she finds them, I'll bring them to the show because it's me at like 9 years old pretending I'm on the radio. And it's, but I used to sit there during the commercials of Pete Franklin's show and I'd be like, okay, caller, you're on the air. And then I would just sit there for a minute and then I'd start yelling at the caller. I'd be like, oh, go gargle with razor blades or whatever Pete Franklin would say.
Sure.
To the call, but I was pretending to be that. I was so young, man. I mean, I was 8, 9 years old, and I wanted to be on the radio, and I wanted to do that.
Sure.
And I literally made it sort of happen. I did the Bob Long thing with WSTB. I was on WSTB. I was the first one ever suspended on WSTB.
Right.
For not following the playlist and for forging logs.
Nice.
We used to have to sign these logs, and I forged my friend Sal's name because he blew it off to go whatever he was doing, skipping class or whatever. So I did his shift, and I didn't talk on his shift. I just played music, but I signed his name on the log, so I got suspended.
Right.
And so I was the first ever. But even at 15 years old, dude, I wanted to do radio so bad.
Right.
And one of the things that I did at WSTB was I was the first one ever, and you can ask Bob this, to have a national guest on the show. I worked it out to do, and I did an interview with Night Ranger on my show at 7:30 in the morning. Somehow we got Night Ranger to call in at 7:30 in the morning to be on the Chris Aiken Experience on WSTV. And that was like, but I was 15 and I did it myself. It wasn't like I had Bob make any phone calls or anything. I made all the phone calls and
sure.
I faxed over everything I needed to fax. And at that time you had to mail things. And,
right.
It was a whole thing, but that's how hungry I was for it. I joined the Army to be on the radio.
Sure.
But then my voice changed mid-course. I was in the radio course and I'm going, all right, it's Private Chris Aiken here. Sounding all terrible. And they were like, flunk out.
Well, speaking of WSTB, I was the first one who ever did live remote.
Oh, yeah, I remember that with LA Guns, right?
It was LA Guns. Actually, it was the Rock Never Stops tour out at Midwest Fireworks out in Deerfield.
Right.
I had a van, and I took a van out there, and I had the WSTB radio banner that I had on the side of the van.
Right.
And I was live remoting in by way of cell phone.
Okay.
From the Rock Never Stops tour, and it was LA Guns with Ralph.
Right.
And Firehouse, Warrant. Let's see who else was on that tour. I think
Slaughter.
Slaughter was on there too.
Right.
And I did a live remote from there, and I was the first one who ever did live remote.
Cool.
Yep.
But that's cool. And I love those old memories, dude, because it's really weird how all that stuff kind of comes to where we are today, isn't it?
Sure. Absolutely.
It's just so, even me and you doing a show together, it shouldn't have happened. Really. I mean, I love Randy, but what are the odds that me and you meet at a show that has nothing to do with metal?
Right.
And it just works. The odds are very slim on that.
Sure.
And what's weird is I used to get invited to shit all the time. You invited me to come and do the show, that night at the Black Crows. You're like, hey, if you're ever not busy, come on down on a Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I'm sure you made that offer to 400 other people too, because that's what you do in the radio thing. And you're like, hey, you meet somebody and you're like, hey, come on down sometime. We'll have fun.
Right.
Everybody says that. It doesn't usually happen where the guy calls you a week later and says, yeah, I'm going to come down.
Yeah, sure.
And I did, and it just worked. It's weird how it all came together.
Yeah.
But it did, which is great.
20 years gone, and here we're still doing it and going better than ever.
Yeah, and doing bigger numbers than, when Corey told me the numbers last week, I was like, holy shit. We're doing like fucking a football stadium every week.
Right.
That's a lot of fucking people.
That is a lot of people.
I mean, if you think about that realistically, I would say that we would have the same audience as like a specialty show.
Sure.
On a station.
Yeah.
But we're doing the size audience of a New York or Chicago. 50,000?
Yeah, that's a large metropolitan area.
Yeah, for a show, but I'm saying not necessarily just the number, but the number that we're actually reaching.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Cleveland, I know for a fact when we were doing the metal show, which was popular as shit, and you even know that. It was a very popular show. We were doing half of what we're doing here.
Right.
We were doing about 25,000 listeners. And we're doing double that.
Right.
It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, technology.
Yeah, but I don't think it's only the technology. I think we're pulling an audience that's not being touched. The content is a core. It reaches a core of people that can't find any other content, like it. Don't you think?
I would agree.
It's funny. I was Norton and Sam Roberts started a new show. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to their show this week. They put it up on YouTube every day, which is kind of nice.
Sure.
You have to buy XM. But I was giving it a listen, and I gave Opie's show a listen, and I mean, it's no secret. O&A, that was my shit. That was really my shit. I mean, even more than Howard. When I discovered O&A, I was like, good God, this is dead on what I want to do. I want to put chicks in fucking cans and drop eels on their face. That's what I wanted to do. I really wanted to do that kind of radio.
Right.
But I was listening to it this week and I was like, all right, this isn't bad, but it's not great.
Well, of course, it goes back to the very beginning of this conversation. There's that element that's missing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's three average shows now instead of one really great one.
Sure.
Which, and I do like the Cumia show. I do enjoy that a bunch. I think Anthony's so talented that I really have learned how much of the show he carried, because he does do a quality show pretty much every day.
Right.
But
the thing is he's not wrapped up in a marriage and kids like Opie.
Right, exactly.
When Opie got married and he banged out a couple kids with his wife and stuff, that focus is taken away, that energy is taken away from doing a show.
Right.
It's more domesticated now, and he's the kinder, gentler, more, maybe, I don't know that it's PC so much, but the venom isn't there as a single guy who doesn't give a fuck about what people think.
Right. Well, and by contrast, Anthony is like us, does not give a fuck.
Right, but he's not married. He's not tied down with kids and home responsibilities, and doesn't have a boss, and he can just cut loose and do what he does.
I know.
And that's the difference.
I've thought long and hard about reaching out to Keith the Cop about going on, putting us on there. I don't know, and I haven't even talked to you about it, but I've been really doing some research in the last month, doing the show with live video as well.
Okay.
And I think it's at the point now that we could do it, without having to upgrade anything. Just, I was reading about how YouTube is working now. and we could do live video with YouTube with just one little piece of free software.
Okay.
And I was thinking about maybe trying it. Maybe you and I would try like a sample show or something and see how that went. But if that went well, then we could put it up. Because that seems to be where radio is sort of going right now.
Well, yeah, I notice, I subscribe to some of these equipment manufacturers, and TV radio is the way that it's going. I mean, look at T-Radio V.
Right.
And then, I was at Badlands Pond a couple of weeks ago, and that's what they do. Their radio station is on local television. Their morning show is broadcast on the local Fox stations. And there's more and more software being geared toward the TV radio combo thing. Right,
exactly. But we could do it. I mean, the only thing you wouldn't have to adjust anything. I would definitely have to, I don't know, brush my hair. Instead of coming in here like a fucking scumbag straight out of bed.
Sure.
Because you know how I roll, dude. A lot of times I come straight out of bed and do the show.
Right.
I take a long nap so that I'm awake, but I'd have to stop that and actually act like a somewhat professional.
Right.
But we could do it now. And that's what's interesting to me was I started looking. My son actually turned me on to it. He was like, he showed me something with like video, and it was kids. And I was like, these fucking kids do not have a bunch of money. To where they're doing this, and they're doing the whole thing with the split screen and whatever.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I was like, well, if they can do it on YouTube, why can't we? We have fucking thousands of dollars worth of gear.
Yep.
Both of us have HD cameras. I have several HD cameras now. The new computer that I have in here, the all-in-one that I bought, that it has an HD camera built into it, and I could just set that up and go, and we're there. So, and maybe, the problem is timing for us. Me and you finding a Wednesday or something to do it is not that easy.
Right.
But we'll figure it out.
Sure.
I mean, do you want to do that, or do you want to not even bother?
I'm always open to new opportunities. You know that.
Yeah. Well, I know you did it once. I remember when we tried. Remember how difficult that shit was?
Mm-hmm.
We had to set it up, and it was streaming fucking still pictures every like 10th of a second or something.
Yeah, but we got better technology than that years ago. I
know. I just remember that stuff.
Yeah, but we got the HD cameras now and stuff, and that doesn't take quite the bandwidth, and plus the processors are built into the cameras now, so they don't rely on the the PC processors and all that. Right. So we were way past that.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll try it. I mean, it looks like the only thing we'll have to do is there's like a key that I'll have to pass to you every week for the show, but so that we can go live. But whatever, cut, paste, done.
Right.
It doesn't seem hard.
Hail and Kill caller, you're on the air.
Hey guys, how you guys doing tonight?
We're doing, Scotty. I guess if you've been listening, we're doing well.
Good. Hey, I got a few things actually. One thing I want to put out before I forget is that as far as like a camera, if you guys decide you want to go this route with the video, the most popular camera that like for most of the more professional YouTubers use is the Logitech C920 or the C930.
Got it.
Gives you the 1080p.
I've already got it. I got one right here in the studio.
Oh, right on. Yeah, that's like the one that most of them use.
Sure.
And I don't know, just to touch base on some of the things that you were talking about earlier. First and foremost, I just like to say I'm sorry for your loss with losing your mom, the car accident some years ago. I was listening to while you were talking about your influences from your early life, and also I remember the Evel Knievel thing. I almost fucking dislocated my shoulder back then, jumping 6 garbage cans. We used to do that shit like all the time. That and skateboards. That's what we used to do back in the 70s.
Did you wear a helmet? Did you wear elbow and knee pads, or did you just go for it?
Oh, we always went for it unless we went to the skate park over in Colchester, and you had to wear the helmet and knee pads there for insurance reasons.
Sure, but when you were a kid though, and riding your bike and jumping shit, you weren't wearing helmets and shit. You were just doing it.
No. Fuck yeah, man! You don't know what fucking pain is at that age. You know, it's like you just fucking look at that fucking ramp, line it up, and fucking just start fucking pedaling your fucking ass off and just go for it.
Right.
But, yeah, I hit the back wheel off the last garbage can and went over the front of the handlebars, and that fucking hurt like hell. I thought for sure I fucking dislocated my shoulder.
But you're still here to talk about it.
Fuck yeah, boy.
All right.
And the other thing was when you were talking about Chicago, back then I used to be a huge Chicago fan. I was like, when Terry Cass died,
mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that so fucking sucked, man. I couldn't believe like what actually fucking happened to him. Accidentally shoot himself in the fucking head like that. But he was like just such a fucking talent. I mean, I was watching some video recently of one of their shows from there's a shed up here in Massachusetts called Tanglewood.
Right.
And they played 25 or 624, and he does this extended guitar solo in the middle of it that is just absolutely incredible. I just fucking love those guys so much. I still do, but I don't know. It seemed like during the 80s, like when they started going towards that softer sound with Peter Cetera, I don't know, they kind of lost me a little bit there for a while. But that older stuff from the 70s was just awesome shit. It really was.
I agree.
And you also mentioned another one, John Mellencamp.
Mm-hmm.
I always really, really liked that song, Scarecrow.
Yeah.
I would never consider myself a John Cougar fan, but that one song though really resonated with me. Was Scarecrow from, I think it was from the album by the same name. And I don't know. I guess that's all I got for now. And I don't know. Have a good show. And Chris, don't forget that link I sent you about the that story.
I got it, Scotty.
Yeah, you can't fucking rate that. It's just fucking incredible. But anyway, hail and kill. Fuck you, pal, and job.
All right, there goes Scotty.
Yeah, what was the song on that starts off where he goes, oh, well, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah. It's called Mother Lovin' For Ya.
Mother Lovin' For Ya. That's a good tune.
I know. I was actually playing that in the car last week. Well, one, two, what the fuck? Ha.
It's a good tune.
Yeah, it is.
I like that album. That, to me, that's his best work of the ones that I've heard, which admittedly is not the whole catalog.
Sure.
I heard only the popular stuff.
Sure.
Hurt So Good, and what was the one before it? I Need a Lover.
Yeah, it was just self-titled.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And then was good. Didn't like Scarecrow. Which one had ROCK in USA? That's Scarecrow, right?
That was Scarecrow.
Yeah, didn't like that. And then the one Whenever We Wanted, I liked that because it was kind of heavier.
Yeah, that's I saw that at the Richfield Coliseum, and I got to meet him after the show for that.
Nice. Mm-hmm. And that's about where I fell off. I mean, I'm sure he's done like 40 albums since then.
Yeah.
But that's the last one I ever owned was Whenever We Wanted.
Sure.
But I like Mellencamp. He's good.
Yep. But on a solo basis, he's my most as far as solo artists go, I really like that.
Yeah. See, my musical thing is so wide. I could point to NWA or LL Cool J or Cannibal Corpse or I love so much different music that I can't really point to like one that would be like an influence type. Like if I was going to start a band, I would do that.
Sure.
Because I don't know. I mean, I love all that old 70s stuff, and I'm a fucking Temptations freak.
Right.
You know, I think David Ruffin is one of those guys that, you know, thank God I got the chance to see right before he fucking died.
Right.
But, you know, I was very fortunate to catch him doing like 4 or 5 songs, him and Eddie Kendrick with Hall & Oates.
Right.
Which was cool. And those guys were cool. Do you find it weird or hard to call an influence now because you've met so many people? Because it takes away from their influence because you know them?
No, I you know, the thing is that the ones that have really made an impact on me, even if I met them, they still make an impact. You know, to this day, and because they were so ingrained or made such an indelible impression on me at such a young age that it just stays with you even into your middle ages. And I just found it to be a very unique opportunity if I got to meet them in person.
Sure. But see, like, I'll give you an exact example where I'm the opposite. I worshipped my first favorite band of the metal genre was Motley Crue.
Okay.
Loved Motley Crue.
Sure.
When they first came out, 82 or whatever that was, with what is that album called? Too Fast for Love.
Right.
Loved it. But now you can't even get me to listen to Motley Crue because I've met them and they're dicks.
Yeah, but the thing is that at a young age, you don't have the discerning ability to separate somebody who's kind of a vapid dick.
They were. I was older when I met them.
Well, no, but when you were younger, when you first became a fan,
yeah,
you didn't look at them as having, you know, tendencies that wouldn't agree with you. But then when you met them after you formulated your values, if you will, or became aware, then you realize, hey, these guys were kind of an assholes.
Yeah, dude, that to me, that's like, I still remember when I met them and they were just douchey.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was so disappointed. I mean, I wasn't like upset or anything, but I was disappointed. You know, because truthfully, most of the guys that I've met have been okay. You know, not awesome, but okay. Didn't ruin anything. Thank you. But most of them didn't ruin anything for me.
Sure.
They were, like Jeff Tate. Jeff Tate, not exactly the friendliest fellow you're ever going to meet. I mean, you'll admit to that.
Oh, yeah.
But not a dick.
To where it spoiled your enjoyment of what he's done.
Yeah, to where if you hear whatever Empire, first thought you have in your head is, man, that guy's a dick. But I'm like that with Motley Crue now. When I hear Motley Crue, my first thought is, those dicks. Fucking Vince, fucking Nikki. That's my first thought. And then I can't listen to it.
Well, here's one that was like that for me the first time I met him, and then he redeemed himself.
Yeah.
Was Blackie Lawless. The first time I met him, total dick. Just acted like he was put out, like, I don't have time for you, just leave me alone. Mm-hmm. And then the second time around, his publicist or whoever agreed to allow me to interview him.
Okay.
And I got locked away in the Odeon in the dressing room above the stage.
Right.
Just Blackie and myself.
Right.
He gave me a full hour. And when I was done, I said, I thank you for the interview. And he says, best interview I've ever done.
Nice.
And then the next time he called, I reminded him who I was. In fact, I was supposed to do a pre-record interview. This was on WSTB.
Right,
I was supposed to do a pre-record on Friday to play on Saturday. He called the house. I reminded him who I was, and the interview, he goes, oh, that's you. He goes, you know what? This is like old home week. He says, when is your show? I said, it's tomorrow. He says, why don't I just call in live?
You're like, all right.
I'm just like, great. And then I interviewed him again, about a year later, and I reminded him again yeah, good to talk to you again, just friendly, nice, Yeah. And then I interviewed him for the Neon God series.
Right.
And that's when it all started, that whole controversy with Frankie Banali.
Right. Then you weren't his friend anymore.
Well, no, not Frankie. I mean, not Blackie, but Frankie.
Frankie, right.
Yeah.
You know who I have like that? Your best friend, Don Dokken.
Yeah.
Well, the first time I ever talked to Don was on a phone interview, and he hung up on me.
For Shadow Life.
Yep, for Shadow Life. He was not doing a good. I don't know if it was him, me, or both. Probably both, because that was way early when I first started doing interviews, and I couldn't get him to fucking start talking. He just wouldn't. He was real yes or no. He was totally not into it, and so I asked him what I thought was just a fucking let's start a conversation question. It was really, I just sort of asked him, I said, where does this record stand in the Dokken catalog? Is it the best? Is it the worst? Where would you put it? And Don goes, oh, it's the best thing we've ever done. And I was like, really? And he goes, you don't think so? And I said, are you asking me my opinion? And he said, yeah, tell me what you think. And you know me, I just fucking unloaded. I was like, no, dude, it's terrible. You sound bad. George sounds awful. It stinks. And he's like, well, fuck you, man. And he fucking hung up on me. And I didn't. I reminded him of it. I don't know. I was back on the show here with you. So that's what, 8-10 years later.
Sure.
And he laughed about it, but he remembered it. He told me, he said he's done 10,000 interviews in his life and he's hung up on 2 people, and I was one of them.
Right.
So, but we obviously worked through that, and and Lord knows when it all came to be true, I was right on that one. Even he'll admit it now. Now he doesn't want he doesn't want to admit that he sang on it.
Right.
It was garbage. But
yeah, I agree.
But yeah, that was that was my guy that I ended up becoming friendly with after.
Sure.
So good times, man.
I agree.
All right. We really aren't talking about anything, right?
I know. Well, it's time for a drink.
Yeah, I'm in for that. We killed another hour?
We did.
Jesus, it's already 1 o'clock.
Here's that song you were talking about right here.
All right.
What the fuck?
That one?
Yeah, that's a good tune.
That is a good tune. Maybe we'll play it.
Play it.
We're going to play the whole song. So we're going to play a couple songs. We're going to come back. I got a couple stories to get to. I got one that goes totally against everything I believe in.
Okay.
It was submitted by John Phillips, one of our hardcores. And when I read it, I was just like, holy fuck.
All right, I'm in for that.
I don't know why people gamble with their lives the way that they do, but they do. But you're gonna love this. And then I got a couple other stories the fans submitted. So we'll be back. This is kind of out of character for us, but even Serena said when I played this song for her a while back, she said, you ought to play that on the show and not tell anybody who it is.
Yeah,
because it's a very raw, dirty song.
Yeah, I like this tune.
All right. This comes from John Mellencamp's Aha release, and this is called Lovin' Mother Foya. So check it out. This is John Mellencamp exclusively here
on your classic whatever show.